Every story we tell is a journey, a thrilling adventure that will keep you hooked from start to finish. Before we begin, let us know where you're watching from. We love seeing our community come together from all around the world. And don't forget, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Tomorrow, we have a special story just for you. Trust us, you won't want to miss it. See you on the next adventure. This never happens. A royal guard had to draw his gun. The afternoon sun shone brightly over Buckingham Palace, casting golden reflections on its grand gates. Tourists from around the world had gathered outside, their cameras raised, capturing the iconic scene of the royal guards standing motionless in their striking red tunics and towering black bearskin hats. Among them stood Elliot Fraser, a seasoned guard with years of training and discipline. His rifle was held firmly at his side, his gaze locked forward, his posture unshakable. For Fraser, this was another routine day. He had endured countless hours of standing still, blocking out the laughter and teasing of tourists who tried to provoke a reaction. Some waved their hands in front of his face, others struck exaggerated poses beside him, hoping to make him break composure. But Fraser, like all royal guards, remained resolute. His job was not to entertain, it was to protect. The crowd swelled as more visitors arrived, eager to witness the legendary changing of the guard ceremony. Laughter and conversation filled the air, blending with the sounds of camera shutters clicking. Children pointed in awe at the guards, while parents explained their unwavering discipline. Everything was as expected, until Fraser noticed something unusual. A man stood at the far end of the crowd, separate from the tourists. He wasn't taking pictures or admiring the palace. He was simply watching. His hands fidgeted inside the pockets of his long coat, his posture tense. Unlike the excited visitors around him, he showed no sign of curiosity, only a strange, unsettling focus on the guards. Fraser's pulse quickened, but he remained outwardly still. His years of service had trained him to observe without reacting. Something about this man felt off. His movements were restless, his gaze sharp, and the way his fingers kept disappearing into his coat pockets set off alarms in Fraser's mind. Then, as the crowd unknowingly continued their cheerful chatter, the man took a step closer. His hand dipped into his pocket once more. Fraser's grip on his rifle tightened. Was it nothing? Or was this about to be something far more dangerous? Whatever the answer was, Fraser knew one thing: he had to be ready. Fraser remained still, his body trained to show no outward reaction. But inside, his instincts were on high alert. The man in the long coat wasn't behaving like an ordinary tourist. He wasn't holding a phone or taking photos like everyone else, he was watching. Studying. His hands dipped in and out of his pockets, his movements jittery, his eyes darting around like he was waiting for something. Something wasn't right. The crowd, still buzzing with excitement, remained oblivious to the growing tension. Parents lifted children onto their shoulders, tour guides pointed toward the palace windows, and street performers entertained nearby. But Fraser's focus never wavered. He had seen enough in his years of service to recognize when someone didn't belong. Then the man moved forward. It wasn't the casual approach of a tourist getting a better view, it was deliberate. He stepped closer to the palace gates, his hands still inside his coat. Too close. Fraser spoke for the first time. His voice was deep, firm, and carried across the courtyard. Step back. A few tourists turned toward him, momentarily confused. The royal guards rarely spoke, let alone issued warnings. Some people even raised their phones, sensing something unusual was happening. But the man didn't stop. His steps were slow but steady. Closer. Closer. Fraser's heartbeat quickened, but his face remained expressionless. His training demanded that he never move unless absolutely necessary. But this man, this potential threat, was testing the limits of protocol. Step back. Now. Fraser's voice boomed louder, cutting through the cheerful hum of the crowd. This time, more people noticed. Murmurs spread as heads turned. A few visitors instinctively moved back, sensing the shift in atmosphere. But the man still didn't stop. Instead, his right hand plunged into his pocket. The world seemed to slow. Fraser's breath hitched. A weapon? A gun? A knife? A bomb? His grip on his rifle tightened. This was it. He had no time to think. No time to wait. He had to act. The moment the man's hand plunged into his pocket, time seemed to freeze. Every muscle in Elliot Fraser's body tensed, his heart beat thunderous in his ears. Was it a gun? A knife? A bomb? He didn't have the luxury of waiting to find out. His training kicked in. For the first time in his career, he moved. In a split second, Fraser's rifle was off his shoulder, cocked, and aimed directly at the man's chest. Drop it. Hands in the air. Fraser's voice boomed, shattering the cheerful hum of the crowd. A wave of panic spread like wildfire. Tourists screamed, stumbling backward. Parents pulled their children close, while others instinctively ducked behind the gates, shielding themselves. Nobody had ever seen a royal guard react like this. The man froze. His right hand was still inside his coat, but his breathing became ragged. His eyes flickered between Fraser's unwavering aim and the terrified faces in the crowd. Fraser's grip was steady, but his pulse raced. Every decision in this moment could mean life or death. "Show me your hands." "Now," Fraser commanded, his voice sharp, his stance unshakable. One wrong move, and this would end differently. The crowd held its breath. Some had their phones raised, capturing the intense standoff. Others were too shocked to move, watching as a royal guard, known for never reacting, had broken protocol in the most dramatic way possible. The man's fingers twitched inside his pocket. Fraser's finger tightened on the trigger. Then, in a single, heart-stopping second, the man jerked his hand out. Fraser's entire body reacted. His mind processed 1,000 possibilities in an instant. And then, the object came into view. A cell phone. Nothing more. Just a phone, held up like a lifeline. Fraser's breath hitched. His grip on the trigger softened, but his rifle remained locked on target. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the crowd erupted in whispers, gasps, confusion. Some sighed in relief, others still gripped with fear. The man stood frozen, his chest rising and falling rapidly. Had he been reaching for a weapon? Or had he just made the worst mistake of his life? The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Elliot Fraser's rifle was still locked on target, his breath steady, but his mind was racing. The object in the man's hand, a cell phone, reflected the harsh afternoon sunlight. The realization hit Fraser like a freight train. No gun. No knife. No bomb. Just a phone. But for the crowd, for the tourists who had just witnessed a royal guard break protocol in the most dramatic way possible, the moment was far from over. Gasps and murmurs spread like wildfire. Some people lowered their phones, too shaken to keep recording. Others kept filming, capturing every second of this unprecedented event. The Royal Guards were famous for their unshakable discipline, for never reacting no matter what, but today, that had changed. Then, in the blink of an eye, palace security officers rushed in. Two men in dark uniforms pushed through the stunned onlookers. One officer grabbed the suspect's arm, twisting it behind his back, while the other secured his movements. On the ground. "Now!" one of them barked. The man stammered, his body stiff with panic. I didn't do anything. I swear. I was just trying to record a video." "You ignored multiple warnings. You made a threatening movement." The officer's voice was cold, professional. "You're coming with us." As they forced him to his knees, Fraser finally lowered his rifle. His hands were still firm, but his chest was rising and falling in deep, controlled breaths. Every muscle in his body was still charged with adrenaline. The moment could have ended so differently. Fraser had been seconds away from pulling the trigger. Had the man hesitated just a little longer, had he made one wrong move, the headlines would be very different. As security led the man away, the crowd remained frozen, unsure of what they had just witnessed. The world had just seen something that never happens. A royal guard had drawn his weapon in the line of duty. And for the first time, people truly understood the weight of their discipline. Because today, the myth of the unmoving, unfeeling Queen's Guard had been shattered. Within hours, the footage went viral. Videos from multiple angles flooded social media, capturing the exact moment a royal guard broke protocol and drew his weapon. News outlets ran headlines like, "Red Circle, Buckingham Palace Guard aims rifle at tourist, was it justified?" "Red Circle, unbelievable. A royal guard's split-second decision that could have changed everything." "Red Circle, for the first time, a Queen's Guard was forced to act, and the world watched." Millions of people debated the situation. Some argued that Fraser had overreacted, saying the man had only been reaching for his phone. Others defended him, pointing out that in high-risk situations, guards can't afford to hesitate. "If that had been a weapon," one military expert explained on live TV, "we would be talking about a mass casualty event right now." The guard did exactly what he was trained to do. As the world debated, Elliot Fraser remained silent. Royal Guards aren't allowed to discuss security incidents, and Fraser had already returned to duty, standing at his post as if nothing had happened. But inside, he knew the truth: he had done what he had to do. Palace officials released a rare statement, acknowledging the event and confirming that security had been tightened. The detained man was identified as a social media prankster, known for pulling dangerous stunts for views. He had ignored multiple warnings and put himself in harm's way, an act of recklessness that nearly cost him his life. For Fraser, it was just another day of duty. But for the millions watching, it was a chilling reminder of the discipline, pressure, and split-second decisions that the Royal Guards face every day. Some tourists returned to Buckingham Palace the next morning, expecting to see Fraser gone, removed for breaking protocol. But there he was, standing at his post, his rifle held just as firm, his gaze locked forward, as unshakable as ever. Because for the Queen's Guard, tradition may be sacred. But when a life is on the line, duty always comes first. Do you think the guard made the right decision? Would you have reacted differently in his position? Comment below. If you found this story intense and eye-opening, hit the like button to support real-life heroes. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories of bravery, duty, and discipline.